In this tutorial, we're going to cover creating the sequence number 5-Lex Luthar. And when we're done, we'll have something like this. So I'm going to start by creating a new composition. I'm going to hit Command N, and I'm going to make my comp 854 by 480 like all the others. I'll put 5-Luthar. And I'll make my time sequence 14 seconds. I'm going to start by dragging the background element into the comp window. It's called 4K Kryptonite Wallpaper. I'll drag that onto screen. And I want to scale this from its corner. So if we take a look at the finished piece, we can see that the background scales for the 14-second duration, and it goes from small to large, scaling from the upper right-hand corner. In order to accomplish that, I'm going to open up my anchor point in my layer window. I'll hit A, and I'm going to hit Y to get the pan behind tool, which will allow me to move that anchor point in the center to the corner at the upper right. Once I've selected that tool, I'll click and drag that to the upper right hand corner. I'll hit V on the keyboard, and I'm going to put that in the corner of the comp in the upper right. Now I want it to go from small to large. I'm going to hit S for scale. I'll drop the first keyframe, and then I'm going to scale it down so that the background is as small as I can get it in relationship to the comp window. Now I'll go to second number 14. I'll hit N on the keyboard, and now I'll scale it back up to 100%. The result will be this. Once I've got that done, I'm going to bring in Jesse Eisenberg's portrait. I'll click and drag it onto screen. You'll see it's already been edited out. And I want to go from the left-hand side of the screen into approximately the center. So I'm going to put his portrait at the right-hand side, just where he disappears. And I'm going to move to second number 2 because, as we kind of talked about in the prior sequences we did, we need a 2-second static point with just the background on it, so that we've got these 2 seconds at the beginning and end of each clip to integrate them into the final sequences that make our final movie. Once I've gotten 2 seconds, I'll hit P for position. I'll drop the first keyframe, and I'm going to go to, I guess I'll drop in 6 seconds, and I'll drag him onto the screen like so. And I'll save that. And the next thing I'd like to do is I want to introduce a green tint to his portrait, much the same as the background. So at the layer select, I'll go to Effects, and I'll go to Color Correction, and I'll go all the way down to Tritone. And I'm going to change the default brown middle value to one of the greens in the background. I'll click on the eyedropper next to the midtones, and I'll go over and I'll click on my comp window. And if it appears to be too bright, I'll go to where it says Blend with Original, and I'll start to bring back some of the original portrait, and you'll see that that green has now been muted. Now that I have his portrait in, I'd like to have a blend mode in which I can see part of the background through the portrait. So I'll select the clip with the portrait, and I'm going to change the blend mode from normal to hard light. Now, I could have done that through the timeline if I have the blend modes available, or I could have gone to layer, and I could have gone to layer blending modes, and I could have chosen it there. You'll see a black dot next to the current blend mode once you've introduced it. In the final sequence, there's a green rain that falls diagonally with the pattern of the background. And in order to accomplish that, I'm going to create a new solid layer. I'll choose black and click OK. I'm going to go up to the top of the user interface to Effect, and I'm going to go to Simulation, and I'm going to choose CC Rainfall. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bump up the size of it so it's a little bit larger, not unlike the pattern of the background. And then I'm going to bring up the opacity to 100%. And I'm going to change the wind. Now the wind will change the direction. If I use a minus number, it starts to put a diagonal in on the pattern. I'm going to bring the wind up to about minus 3400. And next I'm going to drop out the black background. Holding the shift, I'll hit plus on the keyboard to go through my choices. And I'm going to choose lighten. Now once I've got the blend mode I want, I'm going to change the color to a green that appears in the comp window. Under spread, there's color. Click on the eyedropper and put it out over your document to select a green from the original background. At this point, if you wanted to, you can increase the size. Really kind of subjective at this point. Now if we play through, we see we've got that slight effect going across the composition. Next we're going to introduce the Superman character. The Superman figure will be on screen the same time that the portrait comes on, and it will come to rest fading into full opacity at 6 seconds. I'm going to drag the image on screen, hit S for scale, drop it down to about 60%, place it in the lower right hand corner. I've got my playback head at 2 seconds. I'll hit T for transparency, drop the first keyframe, and fade it out. I'll place my playback head at 6 seconds, and I'll fade it back to 100%. Now I'm going to introduce his name. I've copy and pasted one of the text layers from sequences 2 through 4, and I've deleted the keyframes that were on it. This is going to animate from seconds 6 through 9. My playback head is at 6 seconds. I'll select the clip and hit Option Close Bracket. I'm going to change the scale between those 2 second intervals. I'll set the first keyframe for scale, drop the scale to 0, proceed to 9 seconds, and return the scale back to 100%. Now I'm going to add a text effect that appears in the text layer in our timeline to have this track as the text scales up. With the playback head at the beginning of that text layer, I'm going to go down into the layer portion of the timeline, and I'm going to close it and open it again, and you'll see the function text, and you'll see the word animate. Clicking on the triangle to the right of the word animate, we're going to choose tracking. Now I'm going to go down to where the tracking amount appears. There'll be a blue 0, and like all the other animation functions in After Effects, there's a little stopwatch that precedes the term tracking amount. I'll click on the clock and I'll make the tracking amount 100. Now I'm going to go to second number 9, and I'm going to return the tracking amount to 0. If I was to play this now, the text will go from small to large and from tracking back to the original spacing between the characters. I'm going to put one last effect on this. I'm going to put a Gaussian blur over time. I'll put the playback head back at 6 seconds, and with the clip select I'll go to Effect, and I'll go to Blur, Sharpen, and choose Gaussian Blur. Up in the left-hand corner, the effects will appear. I'll drop the first keyframe for blurriness, and I'll try 50. I'll proceed to second number 9, and I will change the blur back to 0. I'm going to drag back to 6 seconds, tap the space bar to preview that. And I'm going to save. And that concludes sequence number 5.